So we're working on a formula for the tangent squared of theta. So if we put sine squared of theta, let's look up here, sine squared of theta was 1/2 times 1 minus cosine 2 theta. And cosine squared of theta is 1/2 times 1 plus cosine 2 theta. So we see that 1 minus cos 2 theta over 1 plus cos 2 theta. This is a formula that will tell us the tangent squared of theta. And so if I want to know the tangent squared of the half angle theta over 2, it's going to be 1 minus the cosine of theta over 1 plus the cosine of theta. So we're going to establish some identities. We'll work on this one together. And then objective 3 is going to be to use half angle formulas to find exact values. So we're going to use those formulas. So sine squared of alpha over 2 is 1 minus cosine alpha over 2. Cosine squared alpha over 2, 1 plus cosine alpha over 2. And then we figured out what the tangent squared looked like. So if we solve these for the trig functions on the left-hand side, we get the half angle formulas. So the sine squared of alpha over 2 is plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cosine alpha over 2. And cosine of alpha 2 is plus or minus the square root of 1 plus cosine alpha over 2. Tangent is going to be plus or minus square root 1 minus cosine alpha over 1 plus cosine alpha. And the plus or minus sign, you have to decide after you figure out which quadrant alpha over 2 is in. So let's look at some examples. Let me copy these formulas here so we can use them. Sine of alpha is plus or minus square root of 1 minus cosine alpha over 2. Cosine alpha plus or minus square root of 1 plus cosine alpha over 2. Okay, so let's do this example. So I have that the cosine of theta is 3/5 and theta is in quadrant 1. So cosine is 3/5. So I draw my 3, 4, 5 right triangle. I'm in quadrant 1. Theta is in quadrant 1. And I want to know where half of theta lives. So I multiply through this compound inequality by a half and see that theta over 2 is between 0 and pi over 4. So theta over 2 is in quadrant 1, where sine theta over 2 is positive and cosine of theta over 2 is positive. So if I want to know what's the sine of theta over 2, I know it's going to be positive square root of 1 minus the cosine of my angle is 3/5. Then I'm over 2. So I'm going to get 1 minus 3/5 on the top. So that's 2/5 divided by 2, which is 1/5 in a square root. So 1 over root 5 or root 5 over 5. So that is the sine of the half angle. And then the cosine of theta over 2 is going to be square root of 1 plus the cosine of 3/5 over 2. So 5/5 and 3/5 is going to be 8/5 over 2, which is 4/5 inside the square root. So 2 over root 5 or 2 root 5 over 5. So if you're in a different quadrant, that's when things are different. So we'll talk about that in class when we do number 12 together. And then this is an optional half angle formula for the tangent of alpha over 2. I wouldn't worry about this. I would use the one we already have, and it's not really important. And then we'll establish this identity together. So that's the end of section 3.5.